Whether you have a little or a lot, every single one of us is the CEO of a small, complex business, our own personal finances. It is a role we are all forced to play, yet it is a role for which we receive almost no formal training. Our education system prepares us for a career, but it fails to teach us the fundamental principles of managing the money we earn. We are taught complex sciences and histories, but the simple, life-altering mechanics of personal finance remain a mystery. But the problem is far more profound than a simple lack of education. The greatest obstacle to your financial success is not what you don't know. It is the very wiring of the brain you are using to make decisions. This brings us to the first and most critical truth you are never taught about money. Neurologically, your future self is a stranger to you. This isn't a philosophical concept. It is a scientific fact proven by a landmark study using MFRI brain scanners. Researchers observed participants' brain activity as they thought about three different subjects: themselves in the present, a random stranger, and themselves 20 years in the future. The results were astonishing. Thinking about their future self activated the exact same region of the brain as thinking about a total stranger. Consider the staggering implication of this discovery. Every single time you are faced with a choice between spending today or saving for tomorrow, your brain interprets it as a zero-sum game. The pleasure of immediate consumption is a direct reward for you. The act of saving, however, is processed as taking your hard-earned money and giving it away to someone else, a distant, abstract person you barely know. In this deeply unfair internal negotiation, your present self holds all the power, while your future self has no voice, no advocate, and no seat at the table. This single, invisible conflict is the root cause of so many of our financial struggles. This disconnect with our future self is then dangerously amplified by our temporary physical and emotional states. This leads us to the second truth you were never taught. Your wallet is directly connected to your stomach and your heart. Let's start with a simple, universal experience: grocery shopping. Rigorous academic studies have demonstrated that a person who shops for groceries while hungry will, on average, spend significantly more money and purchase a far greater quantity of unhealthy, high-calorie foods. Logically, your current state of hunger should have no bearing on the food you will need for the rest of the week. But your ancient, survival-oriented brain does not operate on logic. It operates on the urgent, primal command to acquire resources now. This same short-sighted pattern is why many people's spending habits are so erratic throughout the month. They live in a state of abundance for the first 2 weeks after a paycheck, only to find themselves in a state of artificial scarcity for the last 2, as if the 30-day cycle was a recurring surprise. This vulnerability becomes even more acute when we are in a state of emotional distress. There is a powerful and often costly misconception in our culture that consumption can be a cure for sadness. When we feel a sense of emptiness or loss, we are strongly tempted to fill that void with a purchase. We believe in that moment that a new possession will bring us comfort and relief. But as anyone who is engaged in this retail therapy knows, the comfort is fleeting. The initial dopamine hit of the purchase quickly fades, leaving you with the same underlying sadness, now compounded by the guilt of a poor financial decision and the stress of the impending bill. The belief that you can buy your way to happiness is one of the most expensive lies we tell ourselves. Our brain's inherent vulnerabilities are then exploited by the very tools we use to transact. This brings us to the third truth you are never taught about money. The more invisible the money, the easier it is to spend. As we've discussed before, neuroscientists have proven that paying with physical cash activates a pain center in our brain. This friction is a natural, healthy brake on our spending. But the modern financial system has systematically engineered this friction out of existence. The credit card was the first great anesthetic, but now with digital wallets, one-click online checkouts, and even the wristbands at all-inclusive resorts, money has become almost entirely abstract. This is not an accident. The casino gives you chips instead of cash for a reason. It is psychologically far less painful to push a stack of colored discs into the center of a table than it is to push a stack of $100 bills. When money becomes invisible, our financial discipline often vanishes along with it. This invisibility is then weaponized through the seductive power of installment plans. The buy now, pay later model is a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. It takes a large, painful number and fractures it into a series of small, seemingly insignificant monthly payments. Our brain, with its inherent bias for the present, focuses only on the small, immediate payment and largely ignores the long-term commitment. It is a system that rewards financial indiscipline. Consider the person who wants a new television for a major sporting event. Instead of saving for it in the months leading up to the event, they are encouraged to take it home today and pay for it over the next 18 months, often with hidden fees or interest that dramatically inflates the total cost. So, how do we reintroduce this healthy friction into our financial lives? A simple but powerful practical rule is to think in cash even when you pay with plastic. Before making any significant purchase on a card, perform a mental visualization. Imagine opening your wallet and counting out the full purchase price in physical cash. This simple act can often be enough to re-engage the rational part of your brain. Another counterintuitive but effective technique is to carry larger denomination bills. We are psychologically far more hesitant to break a $100 bill for a small purchase than we are to spend 5 $20 bills. By creating these small points of friction, you are giving your brain a moment to pause, and in that pause lies the power to make a better decision. Beyond the payment method, our brains are also highly susceptible to the sophisticated manipulation of prices and promotions. This leads us to the fourth truth you were never taught. The prices you see are not designed to inform you, they are designed to influence you. Marketers are masters of a psychological principle called framing. The value of an item is rarely judged in isolation. It is judged in relation to the options presented alongside it. Consider the wine list at a restaurant. Which bottle is consistently one of the best sellers? Not the cheapest, because ordering that can feel unsophisticated. It is almost always the second cheapest wine. Restaurateurs know this. They will often place a wine with a very high profit margin in that second slot, knowing that our desire to avoid seeming cheap will guide us directly to it. The same principle works at the high end. A menu will often feature an outrageously expensive trophy item that is rarely ordered. Its purpose is not to be sold. Its purpose is to act as a price anchor, making every other item on the menu seem reasonable by comparison. This is a deliberate strategy to reframe your perception of value. This is then combined with another, even more powerful psychological force, first identified by the Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman: loss aversion. As human beings, the pain we feel from a loss is neurologically more potent than the pleasure we feel from an equivalent gain. Losing $10 hurts more than finding $10 feels good. This principle is the engine behind the free trial business model. When a company gives you 3 months of a service for free, they are not just letting you test their product. They are implanting a sense of ownership in your mind. At the end of the trial period, the act of canceling is no longer a simple financial decision. Your brain perceives it as a loss. You are having something taken away from you. And because we are hardwired to avoid losses, a significant percentage of people will continue to pay for a service they don't truly need, simply to avoid the psychological pain of giving it up. So, if our brains are hardwired for immediate gratification, susceptible to manipulation, and averse to loss, how do we ever win this game? We win by designing a system where our rational, long-term thinking self makes the decisions in advance, taking the power away from our impulsive, short-term feeling self. This is the fifth and final truth you were never taught about money. The most effective way to improve your financial future is to automate it. Consider the act of saving. When your full paycheck lands in your checking account, that money immediately feels like it is yours. The subsequent act of manually transferring a portion of it to a savings account triggers the pain of loss aversion. It feels like you are giving something up. But what if the decision was made for you before the money ever hit your account? Landmark studies in behavioral economics, such as the Save More Tomorrow program, have demonstrated that when people commit in advance to automatically dedicating a portion of their future pay raises to savings, the savings rates skyrocket. Because the money is diverted before they ever feel ownership of it, the psychological pain of loss is completely bypassed. This leverages the same principle we saw with the fruit and chocolate experiment. Our rational self is perfectly capable of making wise, healthy decisions for the future. It is our present self that succumbs to temptation. Therefore, the ultimate financial strategy is to take the decision-making power away from your emotional, in-the-moment self. You do this by automating your savings, automating your investments, and automating your debt payments. You build a financial machine that operates according to the wise, long-term plan you designed, a machine that functions flawlessly regardless of whether you are feeling hungry, sad, or tempted by a sale. Understanding these psychological forces is the key. It is the first step in moving from a state of financial reactivity to one of conscious, deliberate control. This is the knowledge that was missing from your education. It is the understanding that true financial well-being is not about earning more, it is about thinking better. It is about understanding your own mind and building a system that protects you from your own worst impulses, allowing your wisest self to build the future you deserve.